3 days before my wedding with Ethan, my best friend Chloe sat crying on her couch, sobbing that she had fallen in love with someone she shouldn't have. That night, I stayed with her and drank until we were both wasted. Then I called Ethan to come pick us up. Half an hour later, I heard those familiar footsteps stop right beside me. Ethan leaned down, gently pinching my cheek, just like he used to do whenever I got drunk. "Hazel," he whispered. I bit back a smile and pretended to be asleep. I thought that once he realized I was faking, he'd let out a helpless sigh, scoop me up in his arms, and kiss me senseless as a punishment, just like he had done 1,000 times before. But the next second, he turned away from me and walked over to Chloe. "Why did you drink so much?" Chloe sleepily grabbed his sleeve. "Ethan." He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned down and cooed. "I'm right here." I lay there, frozen on the couch. Every drop of alcohol in my system evaporated instantly. At that exact moment, I realized something. Ethan carried Chloe to the front passenger seat first. His movements were practiced and natural. When he finally turned back to carry me, I slowly opened my eyes. "Ethan, why did you carry her first?" His steps paused. He looked down at me, his voice low and soothing. "She's much drunker than you. You can stretch out and lie down in the back seat. It's more comfortable." I nodded slowly. His logic made sense, but for some reason my chest still ached. I looked down, pretending the alcohol was hitting me again, and weakly grabbed the hem of his jacket. "Ethan." He looked down at me.
Yeah.
"If you ever cheat on me, I'll ruin you." He let out a low chuckle, treating me like a drunk, unreasonable girl throwing a tantrum. I could never. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you."
I didn't say anything.
I just slowly closed my eyes. The bridge of my nose stung with unshed tears. As we went through an intersection, a pedestrian suddenly ran across the street. Ethan slammed on the brakes. My forehead hit the back of the front seat. The pain made my vision go black for a second. His first instinct, however, was to reach out his arm to shield Chloe. Only after Chloe was securely settled did he look up, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. I quickly shut my eyes. I didn't even dare to analyze whether he was worried about me, or just trying to see if I was awake. Before I knew it, the car stopped in front of Chloe's apartment building. Ethan got out, bent down, and carried Chloe inside. I slowly pushed the car door open and followed them. The hallway was quiet, with only the echo of our footsteps. I kept a few paces behind them, over and over. I kept telling myself in my head, "Maybe you're just overthinking." But the next second, Ethan pressed his thumb against the biometric lock. The door clicked open. I froze, sharing in absolute disbelief. Chloe stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Their silhouettes tangled together as they stepped backward into the apartment. In that single moment, I realized some questions didn't need to be asked anymore. The half-open door. Ethan finally looked up. The moment he saw me standing there, it was as if he'd been slapped awake. He pushed Chloe away abruptly. "Chloe's drunk." I was just helping her upstairs. My gaze drifted to the biometric lock. I asked quietly, "Did you set up your fingerprint just to help her upstairs too?" Ethan went silent for 2 long seconds before speaking in a low voice. "She needed help with wedding samples and client drafts before. I just helped her out a few times. Kissing her also part of the job." Chloe's eyes were red as she spoke up. "Hazel, don't blame him. It was all me." "Chloe, since when is it your job to explain things for my fiancé?" Ethan immediately stepped forward, shielding Chloe behind his back. "Enough, Hazel. This has nothing to do with her." I looked at him calmly and nodded.
Right.
"It has nothing to do with her. I shouldn't have followed you up. I shouldn't have seen it, and I shouldn't have asked." Flash of panic crossed Ethan's eyes. "That's not what I meant." I shook my head. "I've spent the entire car ride making excuses for you, but I'm done lying to myself. We're over with that." I turned around and walked away. Hurried footsteps echoed behind me. Ethan grabbed my wrist, his palm burning hot against my skin. "Hazel, stop talking out of anger, okay? We've been together for 8 years, not 8 days. The wedding dress is picked. The venue is booked. Our wedding is in 3 days. You were up until midnight yesterday editing our wedding video." My steps halted. That video was a collection of proposal clips he had secretly recorded, in countless places from our college campus to street corners, from snowy mountains to the 8 years of our lives, pieced together second by my own hands. My eyes welled with tears. At that moment, I almost wanted to ask him, "Ethan, can you cut ties with Chloe right now?" But before I could speak, a soft whimper came from inside the apartment. "Ethan." The next second, his grip on my wrist loosened. "Her stomach is acting up. I need to go check on her." He took 2 steps back inside. then paused, looking at me as if fearing I would actually disappear. Hazel, wait for me downstairs. Wait till I get back and we'll talk. I looked at him and slowly pulled my hand away. Okay. Ethan visibly relaxed and turned back into the apartment. I stood there, pulling out my phone to open the WhatsApp wedding planning group. I suddenly remembered when Ethan first started out as an independent wedding planner. He had worked through the night revising the itinerary. Over and over again, I had asked him, "It's just one wedding. Why are you working so hard?" He had looked down and smiled. "'Cause every bride is trusting us with a once-in-a-lifetime dream. A wedding planner's most important job is to never let the bride down." Later, for our own wedding, he spent over 3 months tweaking the design. Chloe had also volunteered to be our wedding coordinator. I stared at the chat box and finally sent out a single message. "The wedding is cancelled." In the back of the Uber, my phone buzzed continuously. This time it was Chloe. I picked up. "Hazel, please don't be reckless, okay?" Soon the voice on the other end changed to Ethan's. "I was wrong tonight, but you can't throw away everyone's hard work just because you're mad at me." I stared out the window and said softly, "Ethan, do you remember what you told me when you planned your first wedding? Well, you've completely let your bride down." With that, I hung up, my fingers clenched tightly around my phone. I couldn't understand. Why did it have to be them? The two people closest to me had personal only destroyed the future I had looked forward to for so long. I lowered my head, finally breaking down into tears. I didn't go back to our shared apartment. All the wedding decorations were still there, along with everything we had prepared. But after tonight, I never wanted to step foot in that place again. By the time I made it to my flower studio, the sky was already turning gray. The next morning, Ethan's call woke me up. "Hazel, Chloe lost the bridal bouquet you dropped off yesterday while she was doing inventory. Can you put together a replacement? I'll come pick it up." I held the phone, not answering immediately. If this had happened yesterday, I would have panicked, but now I felt entirely numb. The contract was still active, and the final payment hadn't been settled yet. "Okay," I replied. I opened the walk-in cooler. Since my own wedding was supposed to be tomorrow, I hadn't ordered any new inventory. The only flowers left inside were the ones I had saved for myself. Ethan had helped me pick them out. Stem by stem, I pulled them out, trimming the stems, removing the thorns, and wrapping them with ribbon. With every cut of the shears, it felt like I was snipping away a piece of our past. Just as the bouquet was nearly finished, the doorbell rang. Ethan had arrived, with Chloe trailing right behind him. When Ethan saw the flowers on the table, his face fell. "Hazel, aren't these?" He didn't finish his sentence. I bent my head to tie the final ribbon. "Yeah, they were meant for my wedding tomorrow." Ethan frowned. I handed the completed bouquet to him. "I don't have anything else." After a pause, I smiled faintly. No more flowers and no more wedding. Just as he was about to speak, Chloe tugged at his sleeve. "Ethan, we're going to be late." Ultimately, he took the bouquet. "Hazel, wait for me to get back." After watching them walk away, I opened my email on my phone. At the very top of my inbox was an admission letter from a prestigious floral design school in Paris, received 3 days ago. Honestly, I had waited for this opportunity for a long time. But Ethan had told me that once we were married, I shouldn't go running off to other countries. I tapped the confirmation link again and booked a one-way ticket, leaving tonight. I began canceling everything related to the wedding. With every vendor chat I closed, it felt like I was tearing out a piece of my own soul from the last 8 years. In the end, only the venue setup remained, which I didn't have the authorization to cancel. By the time I arrived at the hotel to find Ethan, the bride's reception was already underway. On stage, the bride held my bouquet, her face glowing with happiness. The bride choked up as she spoke into the mic. "The person I want to thank the most today is Chloe. My original bouquet was lost by the florist, but Chloe put this one together at the last minute, so I wouldn't have any." Ethan spotted me in the banquet hall. Almost immediately, he walked over, quickly blocking my path. "This is the first wedding Chloe is coordinating on her own.
She worked so hard on this. Don't make a scene now."
I hadn't said a single word yet. In his eyes, my mere presence made me the villain. Who was there to ruin Chloe's moment? I pulled out the floral delivery receipt from my bag. Chloe's signature was clearly written on it. Chloe's face turned pale, and she immediately reached out to grab it. "Hazel, can we talk about this after the wedding, please? I know you're mad at me, but today is about the client." Hearing the commotion, the bride's mother walked over. "Is there a problem here?" Chloe lowered her head, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. The bride was under a lot of stress, and there's an issue with the original bouquet. I just made a quick replacement, With that one sentence, all eyes fell on me. I looked up at Ethan, but he only gently pressed down on my wrist. Let's just get through the wedding first. I suddenly remembered how in the past, whenever something went wrong, Ethan would always stand by my side without hesitation. Back then, even without proof.
He believed me. Now.
Knowing the truth, he was telling me to back down. The bride's mother looked at me cold-eyed. Miss Brooks, today is my daughter's wedding. Whatever business issues you have, they shouldn't be brought here. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I had already lost my own wedding. I didn't want to ruin another bride's day. Numbly, I sat down on a sofa outside the banquet hall. Through the half-open door, I saw Chloe's manager scolding her with a dark expression. You were in charge of inventory. You lost the bouquet, and then had the client thank you publicly. Chloe kept her head down, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stood beside her, making excuses on her behalf. Once the manager left, the hallway fell quiet again. Ethan turned and walked toward me. Are you happy now, Hazel? Chloe worked herself to the bone for this. Did you really have to destroy all her hard work? I suddenly burst out laughing. Ethan, is Chloe really that important to you? So important that you can't even tell right from wrong anymore? Ethan seemed to finally register what he had said. His expression stiffened, and he took a step closer to me. That it's not what I meant. Things were just too chaotic. I was stressed, and I took it out on you. He was always like this during our past arguments. He'd make me cry first, then soften his voice to comfort me. And as long as he apologized, I would always cave. Ethan, for work matters, contact my assistant. As for our personal life, we're done. Ethan let out a bitter, frustrated laugh. Have you had enough of this tantrum? Chloe also spoke up, her eyes red. Hazel, this joke is going a bit too far. Before the words could fully leave her mouth, a sudden commotion broke out inside the banquet hall. The groom stormed out, his face incredibly dark. The next second, he threw the bouquet violently on the floor right in front of us. Didn't we explicitly tell you guys that the bride is highly allergic to gardenias? I instinctively looked down. Among the scattered white roses on the floor, there was a single gardenia stem. Chloe froze, her face instantly losing all color. Tears fell from her eyes right on cue. Hazel, I know you hate me, but the client is innocent. Ethan frowned, turning his gaze to me. Hazel, I never thought you could be this malicious. I curled my lips into a bitter smile, staring straight back at him. Me neither. Ethan, startled, clearly not expecting that response. He knit his brows, lowering his voice. Hazel, now is not the time to be stubborn. Apologize to the client first. Chloe chimed in softly, her eyes red. Hazel, the bride is resting in the bridal suite. Just go apologize. She made it sound like she was trying to help me, but every word she spoke was framing me for the crime. The groom was completely furious now, pointing a finger at us as he yelled, Is this how you run a business? You're quick to take credit, but when something goes wrong, you just point fingers. Their family members quickly surrounded us, pushing and shoving, demanding an explanation. Chloe gasped, stumbling backward. Almost at the same time, someone shoved my shoulder hard. My foot slipped, and I fell onto the floor. As Ethan rushed over, I still looked up. At split second, my body reacted faster than my brain. 8 years of habit made me believe he would check on me first. But the next second, he brushed right past me. He pulled Chloe into his arms, shielding her. Stop pushing. Just then, the paramedics arrived. The bride was wheeled out. Chloe held her wrist, her eyes brimming with tear. Ethan immediately supported her. Chloe, I'll take you to the hospital. I pushed myself up from the floor, blood trickling down my leg from my scraped knee. A hotel staff member nearby handed me some napkins. Brooks, you should tend to your leg. I looked at Ethan. He was busy adjusting Chloe's coat, never once looking back. In the emergency room hallway, Chloe sat next to Ethan while he softly comforted her. I sat on the opposite bench, letting the nurse clean the scrapes on my knee. The alcohol stung, making my fingers tremble. It wasn't until the nurse called out my name to sign the paperwork that Ethan seemed to remember. I was there. Hazel. He walked over, his brows furrowing when he saw my bloody knee. How did you get hurt like this? Didn't answer Hazel. Tonight was too chaotic. Don't overthink things. Go home and rest. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning to head to the venue. I looked at him and slowly pulled my leg back. Okay. He turned and walked away, and I walked in the opposite direction. By the time my flight landed in Paris and I turned my phone back on, a flood of notifications rushed in. The gentle thud of the tires striking the rainy runway at Charles de Gaulle Airport rattled the cabin. Outside the window, Paris was wrapped in a cold, gray mist, illuminated only by the golden halos of airfield lights. As the seatbelt sign clicked off, I pulled out my phone and switched off airplane mode. Within seconds, the device turned hot in my hand. A deafening barrage of buzzes and pings vibrated through the air. Dozens of missed calls. Over 100 text messages. Voicemails stacked up like dry leaves in an autumn storm. Most were from Ethan. A few were from Chloe. There were dozens from our mutual friends, my parents, and the venue coordinator at the Grand Hotel. I didn't open a single text. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. Instead, I swiped through my contacts, selected Ethan's name, and pressed block. Then I did the same to Chloe. I took out the local French SIM card I had ordered weeks ago, swapped it into the tray, and let my old phone number die quietly in the gray European sky. As I walked through the terminal, pulling my solitary suitcase behind me, I imagined what was happening 7,000 miles away. 6 hours behind me, the sun was just rising over the city I had left behind. It was 7 a.m. on what was supposed to be our wedding day. Ethan woke up in the leather armchair of Chloe's apartment, his neck stiff, his head pounding from the residual adrenaline of the night's chaos. He rubbed his eyes and looked at his watch. Hazel, he muttered, jumping up. He had promised to pick me up at 8 a.m. to go to the venue for the final setup. He hastily threw on his jacket, barely glancing at Chloe, who was sprawled sleepily on the sofa, her face still painted with last night's theatrical
Distress.
Ethan, where are you going? She rasped, reaching out a delicate hand.
My
wrist still hurts from yesterday. I have to go, Chloe, Ethan said, his voice clipped, a sudden, cold knot forming in the pit of his stomach. It's the wedding day. I need to get Hazel. He drove to my flower studio first. The iron gates were padlocked shut. The interior lights were dark. Through the glass, he could see the empty walk-in. A cooler, the place where my wedding flowers had sat just yesterday. Panicking, he sped to our shared apartment. He burst through the front door, shouting my name. Hazel. Hazel, I'm sorry I was late. The client stuff was insane, but I'm here.
Now.
Hazel. The apartment was silent. The living room was still filled with half-packed boxes, our customized guest book, and the pressed flower-framed invitations we had made together. But something vital was missing. His eyes fell on the kitchen island. Sitting in the exact center of the white marble counter was a small silver ring, the engagement ring he had slipped onto my finger on a snowy peak 3 years ago. Beneath it was a folded piece of paper and a single brass key. Ethan stepped forward, his breathing coming in ragged hitches. He picked up the note. It contained only 2 lines in my neat, practiced handwriting. A wedding planner's most important job is to never let the bride down. You failed yours a long time ago. Don't look for me. Ethan dropped the paper. His hands began to shake violently. He snatched his phone and dialed my number again. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He called my studio line. Disconnected. He called my mother. Ethan, my mother's voice was cold, clipped, and devoid of its usual warmth. Where is my daughter? Mom, Mrs. Brooks, is Hazel with you? She's not at the apartment.
Her phone is off.
The wedding starts in 4 hours. She isn't here, Ethan, my mother said softly, though her voice vibrated with a deep, furious sorrow. She came by my house late last night. She packed her bags, gave me a hug, and told me the wedding was canceled. She told me what you did with Chloe. It was a misunderstanding. Ethan yelled into the phone, tears finally breaking. Past his composure. Chloe was drunk. She was having a panic attack over a
client.
I was just helping her. Hazel is being unreasonable. Ethan, my mother interrupted, her voice dropping to a icy whisper. Hazel spent 8 years loving you. She spent 8 years putting your dreams before hers. If she walked away 3 days before her wedding, it wasn't because she was unreasonable. It was because she finally saw you clearly. The line went dead. An hour later, Ethan stood in the grand ballroom of the Riviera Hotel. The caterers were unloading silver trays. The band was setting up their
speakers.
The guests, over 200 friends, family members, and business associates, were beginning to pull up in the valet line outside, dressed in tuxedos and pastel gowns. There was no bride. There were no flowers. There was no wedding. When Ethan was forced to step onto the empty stage in front of the swelling crowd to announce that the wedding was off, he looked out into the audience. He saw the bewildered faces of his oldest friends, the disappointed glares of his investors, and, standing near the back, Chloe. Chloe stepped toward him, putting on her softest, most pitying expression. Ethan,
I'm so sorry.
Hazel shouldn't have done this to you. She ruined everything. Ethan looked at Chloe's face, the red eyes, the frail posture, the subtle, triumphant smirk that she couldn't completely hide beneath her feigned concern. For 8 years, he had seen Chloe as a helpless girl who needed his protection. But standing on the ruins of his life, looking at the empty aisle where I was supposed to walk, the veil fell from his eyes. Get away from me, Chloe, Ethan whispered, his voice trembling with a sudden, sickening revulsion. What?
Chloe blinked, stunned.
Ethan, I'm the only one here for you. I said get away from me. Ethan roared, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings of the ballroom, shocking the quiet crowd into utter silence. He didn't wait for her to respond. He threw his clipboard to the floor and ran out into the pouring rain, finally realizing that the woman who had filled his entire world with light had disappeared into the dark. Paris did not heal me immediately. Grief is not something you leave behind at customs. It travels with you, tucked into the lining of your coat, heavy and
Cold.
For the first 3 months at the Académie de l'Art Floral, I worked until my hands bled. My apartment in the 7th arrondissement was small, tucked beneath the eaves of an old Haussmann building with a slanted ceiling and a tiny balcony that looked out over gray zinc rooftops. It smelled constantly of damp stems, fresh moss, and
Bleach.
every morning at 5 a.m., I was at the Rungis International Market sourcing raw botanicals alongside master florists who had been cutting roses before I was
Born.
My instructor, Madame Laurent, a terrifying woman with silver hair, sharp spectacles, and a severe reputation across Europe, watched me quietly for the first few weeks. One evening, as the other students left, she walked over to my workbench. I was aggressively stripping the thorns off a bundle of dark crimson roses, snapping off excess leaves with mechanical, angry snips. Mademoiselle Brooks, Madame Laurent said in her accented English, resting a frail, blue-veined hand on my shear blade. Flowers are living things.
They
Respond to the hands that shape them. Yours are suffocating. I froze, tears pricking the corners of my eyes for the first time in months. I'm just doing the assignment, madam. No, she said softly, stepping closer. You are trying to punish the flowers for taking up space. You cut them as if you want them to feel pain. She looked
down at my cut, calloused hands.
Whoever broke your heart in America, why are you still letting him dictate the way you touch beauty? I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat tight and painful. He took 8 years of my life. He took my business. He took my faith in people. Then why give him your art as well? Madame Laurent reached into her apron, pulled out a pair of brass vintage shears, and laid them beside my hands. Not designed to forget him, Hazel. Design so that when the world looks at your work, they see a woman who survived. That night, I went back to my small attic apartment, sat on the floor, and opened my laptop. I checked the old email address I had stopped using. There were hundreds of emails in the spam folder from Ethan. Hazel, please. Just tell me you're safe. I canceled the agency. I haven't talked to Chloe since that day. I found out the truth about the gardenias. The hotel security camera showed Chloe taking the stem out of her purse and slipping it into the bouquet while you were in the back room. She did it on purpose, Hazel. She wanted us to fight. I was an idiot. A blind, foolish idiot. Please come home. We can rebuild everything. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I read the words mechanically. A year ago, those words would have made me sob. They would have given me closure. Now, reading them, I felt nothing. Not anger.
Not joy.
Not even pity. The revelation that Chloe had framed me didn't change the underlying truth. Ethan hadn't trusted me. He had chosen to shield another woman while I bled on the marble floor. The gardenia wasn't the cause of our destruction, it was merely the mirror that reflected his true character. I selected all the emails.
I didn't save them.
I didn't reply. I clicked delete all, closed the laptop, and went to bed. Over the next 2 years, Hazel Brooks disappeared, and Lorcady was born. I poured my grief into structure. I threw away traditional, typewriter arrangements and embraced grand, wild, architectural botanical sculptures. I worked with dried elements, living vines, frozen glass, and rare blooms imported from South America and Asia. My final thesis project at the Academy, an immersive installation titled Level, The Awakening, featuring suspended bowers of pale wisteria twisting through black iron frameworks, was featured on the cover of Botanical Design International. By 28, I was no longer just a florist. I was a lead botanical
Director.
I launched a boutique consultancy in Paris, designing high-profile galas, luxury, fashion week runways, and exclusive European events. I had a small team of talented young assistants, a sprawling studio in Le Marais filled with daylight and rare flora, and a life that was entirely, undeniably my own. I had forgotten the sound of Ethan's voice until the spring of my third year in France. Mademoiselle Brooks, the lead coordinator from the American delegation, is asking to speak with you. My head assistant, Claire, called out, her voice echoing through the massive glass dome of the Grand Palais. It was the eve of the Paris Global Wedding and Event Summit, the most prestigious trade gathering in the luxury event industry. As the guest artist and keynote designer, I had spent the last 2 weeks transforming the central hall into a breathtaking, multi-tiered botanical garden inspired by forgotten ruins, returning to life. Tell them I'm adjusting the lighting on the center arch, Claire, I replied, wiping my hands on my canvas apron as I stepped down from the scaffolding.
I'll
be down in 10 minutes. He says it's urgent, Claire added, looking slightly flustered. He said he knows you personally. He said his name is Ethan Vance. My foot paused on the bottom step of the ladder. For a fraction of a second, my heart pounded, a residual reflex from a past life. But as quickly as it came, the pulse settled into a slow, steady rhythm. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. My chest didn't ache. Show him in, Claire, I said quietly. 2 minutes later, footsteps echoed across the marble floor of the exhibition
hall.
I remained standing by the grand central installation, a towering archway of white delphiniums, cascading jasmine, and deep emerald mosses. I didn't turn around immediately. I listened to the footsteps. They were hesitant, heavy, and frantic. Hazel. The voice was rougher than I remembered, raspy, fragile. I slowly turned around. Standing 30 feet away was Ethan. He looked terrifyingly aged. The polished, impeccably groomed young man who used to strut around wedding venues in tailored suits was gone. He was noticeably thinner, his shoulders hunched, his jawline covered in an untidy stubble. Dark purple circles sat deep beneath his eyes, and his designer suit looked loose, almost threadbare around the cuffs. When his eyes met mine, he stopped dead in his tracks. He gasped, his chest heaving as if he had just run a marathon. I was wearing a simple, sleek black jumpsuit, a silk scarf tied loosely around my hair, and minimal makeup. But the way I stood, upright, poised, unbothered, was entirely alien to him. Hazel, he breathed, taking 3 rapid, clumsy steps forward. It's really you. I've been searching for you for 3 years. 3 years. Hello, Ethan, I said. My voice was calm, pleasant, and entirely lacking in warmth, the tone I used with courier drivers and hotel managers. He flinched as if I had struck him. Hazel, please don't talk to me like that, he stammered, his eyes darting frantically across my face, searching for a trace of the girl who used to cry in
his car.
I bought a ticket to this summit the moment I saw your name on the floral director list. I spent my last savings to fly to Paris. Is there an issue with your agency's registration, Mr. Vance? I asked, crossing my arms loosely. If you need credentials for the trade floor, my assistant can direct you to the registration desk. Mr. Vance. Ethan swallowed hard, tears instantly welling in his red-rimmed
eyes.
Hazel, stop it.
Please.
I know what I did. I know I was a monster. I know. I let Chloe manipulate me. I know I didn't protect you. Ethan, I interrupted softly. You don't need to do this.
Ido.
He cried out, his voice cracking, drawing the glances of a few French technicians working on the lighting rigs nearby. I lost everything after you left. Everything. The business went bankrupt within 6 months. Clients sued us over the gardenia incident, and when the hotel released the CCTV footage showing Chloe sabotaging your bouquet, nobody would hire us again. He took another step closer, his hands reaching out tentatively, as if he desperately wanted to touch my sleeve, but was terrified I would vanish. I kicked Chloe out of my life, Hazel. She tried to ruin me. She tried to take your place, but she couldn't even organize a vendor list. She was a liar and a parasite. I haven't touched another woman since you left. I live in a tiny studio apartment above a garage. Every single night, I wake up reaching for you on the pillow. I rewatch our proposal videos, the ones you edited. I edit them over and over in my head, wishing I could undo that night. He collapsed onto his knees right there on the polished marble floor of the Grand Palais, sobbing openly, uncaring of who saw him. Please, Hazel. I'm begging you. Forgive me. Come back to me. We can start over. Right here in Paris, or anywhere you want. I'll work for your studio.
I'll sweep.
Your floors. Just let me be near you again. 8 years. You can't just erase. 8 years. I stood there, looking down at the man I had once thought was my entire universe. I looked at his bowed head, his shaking shoulders, his desperate, clinging posture. And in that moment, I waited for the bitter satisfaction of revenge. I waited for the sting of old betrayal. I waited for a flicker of pity. None of it came. All I felt was a profound, hollow stillness. Ethan, I said softly. He looked up, his eyes bright with a pathetic, desperate hope. Yes? Hazel. Yes. You keep talking about Chloe, I said, my voice gentle, almost conversational. You blame her for ruining your business. You blame her for sabotaging the flowers. You blame her for coming between us. Ethan blinked, confused. She did. She lied to me. No, Ethan. I shook my head slowly. Chloe didn't force you to carry her to the front seat of your car first while I was lying in the back. Chloe didn't force you to press your thumb against her biometric lock. Chloe didn't force you to let go of my wrist when she feigned a stomach ache. And Chloe certainly didn't force you to brush past me while I was bleeding on the floor to hold her in your arms. Ethan's face went dead white. The breath left his lungs in a sharp, horrified
Gasp.
You didn't lose me because of Chloe's lies, I continued, stepping closer to him, looking straight into his broken eyes. You lost me because when forced to choose between respecting the woman who built a life with you and playing the hero for a woman who stroked your ego, you chose your ego. Every single time. Hazel. I was stupid, I was blind. You were yourself, I corrected him calmly. And for 8 years I made excuses for you. I shrunk myself so you could feel big. I stayed quiet so you could play the talented, benevolent planner. That night at Chloe's door didn't ruin our future, Ethan. It just woke me up. He sat on the floor, paralyzed, tears streaming down his face, unable to utter a single word. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a clean linen handkerchief, and bent down, placing it gently on the floor beside his knee. Stand up, Ethan, I said, my tone completely devoid of malice. You're a guest at an international trade summit. Have some dignity. Do you hate me? He choked out, his voice a broken whisper. I looked at him, and for the first time in 3 years, I smiled.
It was a
genuine, quiet, beautiful smile.
No, irreplaceable souffle.
Hate requires energy, Ethan. It requires holding on to a space in my heart for you. But there's nothing left in my heart for you.
Not
anger, not bitterness, not even memory. I turned my back on him. Claire, I called out to my assistant, who was watching from the edge of the pavilion with wide eyes. Please escort Mr. Vance to the exit. And bring the fresh, white hydrangeas for the main archway. We have a show to open tomorrow. The grand opening of the Paris Global Summit was a magnificent success. The main hall of the Grand Palais was filled with sunlight pouring through the glass ceiling, illuminating thousands of ivory, emerald, and gold blossoms, hanging in delicate, gravity-defying waves above the crowd. Hundreds of journalists, international designers, and luxury planners applauded as I stepped onto the main stage to deliver the opening address. From the stage, I scanned the crowd. Ethan was not there. Claire later told me he had checked out of his cheap hotel that very morning and taken an early flight back to America. Later that evening, after the crowds had cleared and the golden hour light began to fade over the River Seine, I walked out onto the high stone terrace of the Grand Palais, holding a glass of chilled champagne. The cool Paris wind played with the hem of my silk dress. Below me, the city was lighting up, the Eiffel Tower sparkling in the distance, the yellow headlights of cars glinting on the bridges, the sound of street musicians playing accordions. Near the riverbanks, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out. It was a photo from my mother back home.
It was a picture of my
old studio, which she had helped lease to a bright, talented young girl who was just starting her floral career. Attached was a text. She uses your old workbench, Hazel. She says it has good energy. I smiled, setting the phone down on the stone balustrade. 3 years ago, I thought my life had ended on a dark, silent hallway floor, outside an apartment that wasn't mine. I thought that when a dream of 8 years shatters, it leaves behind only jagged glass that cuts you every time you try to breathe. But standing under the Parisian sky, smelling the scent of fresh jasmine, drifting from the exhibition hall, I realized the truth. Some things have to break so that you can finally see what you were meant to
Build.
I took a slow sip of champagne, leaned against the warm stone railing, and looked out at the lights of the city, unbroken, untamed, and entirely free.